It's easy to accept a short, tidy report when a major story breaks, a single sentence that wraps a complex, chaotic moment into a neat headline. But the truth, especially after a public incident at a university event, is almost never tidy. On September 10, 2025, a public talk at Utah Valley University ended in tragedy when Charlie Kirk, the political commentator and co-founder of Turning Point USA, died in a tragic incident. Within days, authorities named 22-year-old Tyler Robinson as the person under investigation, and investigators said they had collected evidence from the scene. Those are the anchor facts. What followed was a rapid, high-intensity investigation, a national media spotlight, and a torrent of public reaction that blended verified facts with rumor, partial documents, and sometimes outright falsehood. In this segment, we are going to take a careful walk through what investigators have said publicly, what independent reporting is verified, what remains unclear, and which gaps in the public record deserve scrutiny. This is not a call to replace evidence with speculation. It's a call to insist that the public record be as complete and transparent as possible, especially in a case that has immediate political resonance. The timeline and the basic public claims. On the night of the incident, witnesses and video show chaos, a speaker struck, people fleeing, and law enforcement converging on the scene. Investigators later recovered a firearm in brush near the perimeter and reported finding a towel wrapped around that weapon. Officials have publicly stated that DNA evidence consistent with Tyler Robinson's genetic profile was found on the towel and on a screwdriver recovered from a rooftop that investigators say served as a vantage point. Law enforcement officials and the FBI have also reported recovering a note they say contains strong language and evidence, suggesting a motive. Agencies have said forensic teams were able to reconstruct elements of that note, even though, according to officials, the original paper and some materials were later damaged in the investigative process. Those are serious investigative claims, and they are the basis for the charges filed by prosecutors. What to make of the available images and video? Authorities released portions of surveillance footage showing a figure moving away from an elevated position after the event. But the images are low resolution, and when paused and zoomed, they remain ambiguous. Families, independent analysts, and social media commentators compared the footage to released photos of the person under investigation and found apparent inconsistencies, differences in height, build, and facial contours. Those comparisons are not definitive proof of anything. Camera angles, lens distortion, clothing, and posture all affect how a person appears on a single frame. Yet the public's request is reasonable and modest. If multiple, higher quality angles exist, releasing them, or at least allowing independent forensic review under controlled conditions, would reduce uncertainty and strengthen confidence in the official narrative. Investigators routinely withhold some material to protect witnesses and preserve the integrity of an active probe. Still, the withholding of crucial raw files inevitably fuels doubt. The role of close associates in digital communications. Reporting shows that a roommate or partner who lived with Tyler, described in several outlets as someone who had been transitioning and who later accepted protection from law enforcement, cooperated with investigators and provided messages and device access. Prosecutors say messages and other digital materials were used to build a timeline and to support charging decisions. But the provenance, timestamps, and authenticity of digital messages can be contested. Messages can be forwarded, edited, or taken out of context. Platforms and intermediaries sometimes report that what is circulating publicly is not the original record. The justice system has procedures to authenticate and challenge digital evidence. For now, many of the underlying device logs and forensic reports have not been publicly released in full. That gap between what prosecutors assert in filings and what the public can independently verify helps explain why speculation rushes in to fill the vacuum. The forensics the FBI and local agencies have described. According to public statements by federal and state investigators, DNA consistent with Robinson's was found on the towel around the weapon and on a screwdriver from the rooftop. Investigators have said that residue analysis results were inconclusive in some respects and that some surfaces appeared to have been wiped down. Officials have also described reconstructing a handwritten note's contents even after the original paper was damaged. These are the kinds of findings juries hear under more controlled conditions and subject to cross-examination. DNA can show contact, but not necessarily timing or who used a weapon. A fingerprint or DNA on a firearm can mean handling but not use. A torn note's reconstructed phrase can be persuasive but must be shown how it was restored and corroborated. In many legal proceedings, the devil is in the chain of custody and in the lab reports, the documentary trail that explains how samples were collected, analyzed, and stored. Those documents are often produced in discovery to defense teams. They are not always immediately public. That is standard investigatory practice, but it also makes the early narrative supplied to the public feel partial. The speed of the public narrative. Within a narrow window, roughly 36 to 72 hours, many outlets moved from breaking news to definitive coverage. A person had been identified, families were making statements, and officials were giving the outlines of the case. Speed is not inherently bad. Timely journalism matters, but speed combined with limited public evidence can create the impression that a tidy story is being pressed before independent verification is possible. That impression is exacerbated when the subject is a polarizing public figure and when national political actors quickly adopt parts of the narrative. When the public's appetite for answers is intense, pressure rises to offer simple explanations. The law, however, moves deliberately in part to avoid mistaking early inference for proof. The swirl of online claims and the importance of fact-checking. In the days following the incident, multiple claims circulated online that local businesses had been told to shut to hide footage, that alternate persons of interest existed, and that key camera angles had been surreptitiously deleted. Independent verification by local reporters and fact-checking teams contradicted several of those claims. For example, reporting indicates that a Dairy Queen location cited in some social posts had closed for lease reasons weeks before the incident, undermining the theory that it was shuttered as part of a cover-up. Other viral posts incorrectly attributed unrelated videos to the incident. Fact-checking can never fully suppress rumor, but it can correct specific falsehoods and help the public separate plausible leads from pure speculation. Legal posture and the path forward. Prosecutors in the case have filed serious charges and signaled an intent to seek the most serious penalties, arguing the evidence, DNA, a recovered weapon wrapped in a towel, communications and other physical items, justify the charge. Defense attorneys have asked for more time to review what they call a voluminous body of evidence. The pretrial discovery process will be the first place where forensic reports, chain of custody records, photographs, full video files, and device extractions are tested and challenged in court. Courts will decide what is admissible and how juries will ultimately be presented with the oral and documentary evidence. Until those hearings play out, public claims, both the prosecutions and the defenses, should be treated as positions in an adversarial process rather than as final findings, questions that remain open and deserve public attention. If you are trying to make sense of this story, here are specific evidence-based questions that matter. Which raw video files exist from which cameras, and will any of them be released in uncompressed form or made available for independent forensic review? What exactly do the lab reports say about the DNA matches, loci, match probabilities, and whether mixtures were present? What do the chain of custody logs show for the weapon, the towel, the screwdriver, and the note? Were backups and hard drives from nearby security systems preserved intact, and if not, why? How were timestamps and geolocation data on phone records authenticated? These are not rhetorical. They are the kinds of documentary facts that convert plausible narrative into demonstrable proof. Asking for them is not obstructionist. It's part of insisting that justice be based on verifiable records. Why careful language matters. In high-profile legal cases, words have consequences. Using absolute language like he did it before the courts have tested evidence risks wrongful reputational harm. Using suggestive language without documentary backing risks spreading misinformation. But equally, a refusal to ask hard questions about missing footage, forensic reports, or witness protections can leave the public with a hollow sense of closure. Balanced reporting and precise legal language help hold institutions accountable while safeguarding due process for the accused. That balance is difficult but essential. What you can do as a responsible consumer of news. If you want to follow the case responsibly, do the following. Prioritize primary documents as they become available. Charging documents, affidavits, and public court filings are the most reliable early sources. Track official agency releases, local law enforcement, and the FBI for updates and raw media that might be posted on official channels. Read multiple reputable outlets and compare how they describe the same facts. Differences in phrasing often reveal where interpretation begins and facts end. Treat viral social content skeptically until it's corroborated by independent reporting or official records. If you see a specific factual claim, e.g., a business was closed to hide evidence, look for corroboration in local records or reporting before amplifying it. This case will unfold in the public record over many weeks and months. Evidence will be produced, contested, and evaluated in court. Some pieces will be conclusive, others will remain ambiguous. The most useful posture for the public is one of informed attention. Insist on documents, demand clear explanations, and support journalism that digs rather than curses the darkness with guesswork. If you want, we will keep tracking verified filings and official releases and summarize any new documents when they become publicly available. But for now, remember, a headline is a claim, a court filing is a record, and the difference between them is the work of evidence and legal testing.